morning. What do you say we learn about the weather for this week? It's time for our forecast with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist and Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Al Dutcher. Al, what are you tracking this week?
Well, it's already looks like we're going to have a hot forecast, at least for this weekend, and then we'll start to cool down next week. But before we get to that main forecast, and we got a little extra time for the taping today, I want to give you a little update on where we stand so far in the month of September. This is for the first 7 days. Of course, we had that cooler weather come in. And so even though it felt like we were below normal, in a lot of locations we weren't below normal. We were basically, especially in eastern Nebraska, right around the normal mark. So first 7 days actually came in much warmer than what we would expect for normal temperatures. And if we look at the precipitation, this is the key. We've had some significant moisture up in the northern portions of the state. And then of course that complex moved toward the southeast. If you look at normal precipitation across western Nebraska during the month of September, in the Panhandle, Scottsbluff, about 1.5 inches. You get into the Valentine area, you're pushing there right along the 2 to 2.25 inch range. As you get over into eastern Nebraska, we're in the 2.75 in Lincoln to around 3 inches in the southeast corner. So we've already received up in the north central portion of the state a month's worth of precipitation. If you look at the 30-year trend here in Nebraska, one of the biggest dominant trends has been very warm conditions during September and very dry conditions. So hopefully this is going to go against the grain. In terms of temperatures, western part of the state unfortunately has been closer to that ridge position and is seeing much warmer conditions than eastern Nebraska. But overall, even with this cool weather, the vast majority of the state well above normal in temperatures. Now as we go through this next 7-day period, we're going to deal with some warm conditions early. Then we'll see some cooler conditions set in as we go into the middle of next week with some chances for precipitation. So as we go to the upper air models, first thing I'll draw your attention to is that ridge we talked about last week did indeed materialize. Starting to flatten out as we get a trough coming across the northern plains, but we're going to see very warm conditions across the southern part of the state. Low pressure to our east is not going to have anything moisture to work with. So we're going to be looking at upper 90s across the southern part of the state, hundreds to the west, and probably the mid 90s to the northeast. Most of the precipitation stays in eastern portions of Idaho and western Montana. Then as we go into tomorrow, we start seeing a flattening out of that ridge. A little bit cooler air starts to sag in from the north. Low pressure sets up over northwestern portions of Kansas. We might see a little bit of moisture, and the moisture that falls is going to be basically from monsoon moisture, not Gulf moisture. Now, by the time we get to Monday, we start to see a little bit of troughing action, pushing a little cooler conditions into our region. Low pressure sets up over southwestern Kansas. We do get a little bit of moisture feed. It looks like most of the convergence on the main frontal boundary will be up in northeastern portions of the state. And by Tuesday, we'll start to see most of that cool air start to sag and much better conditions at the start of Husker harvest days with high pressure pushing in. Unfortunately, with this low pressure in the Texas Panhandle, we may see some precipitation breakout, and most of it looks like it's going to be from Omaha over to Red Cloud and southeastward. And then we start to see some cooling conditions as we go into Wednesday. At least it'll be nice out in Husker harvest days. Temperatures well into the lower 80s. High pressure sets in. Precipitation is just not going to be there as it pushes toward the southeast of Nebraska. As we go into Thursday, we start to see that ridge rebuild itself back in as the next trough over southern Canada tries to move into the northern plains. So that's going to lift our temperatures back up into the upper 80s. Low pressure forms over southern South Dakota. Just no moisture to feed into it because it's all being intercepted by the frontal boundary passes that passed through earlier in the week. And as we get into Friday, the warmth starts to move into the southeast part of the state and the cooler air starts to push into the northwestern Panhandle. We get a low pressure over to Wyoming. That's going to tap some monsoon moisture. So some of this is not showing up in the radar. I do expect to see a little bit better precipitation coming out of the western United States. And as we go a little bit farther in time, looking at the 8 to 14 day forecast that takes us from next Thursday to the following Tuesday, that high pressure ridge will slowly slide toward the east. That trough will come in. So we're going to start to see a break in this as we get basically around the 20th of the month. And then as we look at that, the precipitation is below normal with this high pressure ridge, but very strong precipitation looks to follow the next week and very cold temperatures.